Good morning and welcome to our webinar, IoT Reimagining the Edge. My name is Alex Glaser and I'm with Harbor Research. Today I'm joined with our president, Glen Allmendinger, and today we also are joined by two special guests, the CEO of niolabs, Doug Standley, and the CTO, Matt Dodge. Let me start with a little background before we dive into the contents of the webinar. Harbor Research is a strategy and research consulting firm focused on the Internet of Things and smart systems. Glenn and I spend the majority of our time working with large companies, both technology suppliers and product manufacturers, helping them draft and deliver their digital strategies. Before we dive into the agenda, I figured it'd be good to give a little background on niolabs and our relationship. So Harbor Research conducts an ongoing study of over 250 platforms currently out there, and we were given access to niolabs technologies a while back, probably about 4 or 5 years ago. And it was actually before Doug and the team were even considering turning this into a company, and we stayed very close with them along their journey. And as you know, we have been able to write about them and promote their different technologies, but now it's really time to kind of take the cover off and show the real capabilities of the platform and the tools that they've developed. So as we dive into the webinar, I want to point out a few points about the agenda. So as far as the agenda, we're going to use the next hour to have a conversation. This is not your standard slide webinar. We're going to get into the details with a demo and actually show the tools and capabilities of that niolabs has produced. And then we're going to have a conversation with Doug and Glenn about the challenges that companies are actually facing in the market as they try and address IoT. We'll wrap up with the discussion about how niolabs plans to take their platform to market and leave some time for Q&A. If you see on the left-hand side of your screen, there's a place where you can submit questions, and we will address those with the last 10 minutes of the webinar. So before I hand it over to Matt, if you'd like to, please join the demo. So go to n.io/demo from your mobile browser, enter your email, and choose if you'd like to allow your Gravatar or profile image, and then choose which cloud provider you'd like to connect to. And from there, we'll be able to show certain capabilities as a result of this. So with that, Matt, I hear you aren't a big fan of slideware, so I'd like to talk a little bit about how you've planned to kick this off.
Yeah, thanks, Alex. I'm more of a gotta see it to believe it kind of guy, so I figured a demo might be the best way to do that. So I guess I'll walk everybody through what we're going to show you here. Really, this demo is going to act as a metaphor for what a real world IoT solution might look like. The architecture is going to really align with what a typical solution would look like. In this demo, we'll have sensors at the very edge. We'll be using mobile device sensors like your GPS, your accelerometer, and your gyroscope. And the mobile device is actually going to be our edge compute node. So we're all holding in our hands quite a bit of compute power, and we'll be harnessing that with Neo to actually provide intelligence at the edge. So in this diagram here, what we're actually going to do is build a system. We're going to build a system, and the system is going to be comprised of a lot of different things. Mobile devices connected from all over the country. So I'll go through the connection instructions again here in a second if you need to rejoin. We have Neo instances running in 3 different cloud providers. There's one running in AWS, one running in the Google Cloud Platform, and then one in Azure. And then we'll have a visualization node, which I'll be sharing the screen with here so we can actually see the output of the system. So in this diagram here, all of the blue dots represent Neo nodes. That means Neo is running in some form or fashion on the actual device itself. That means Neo at the edge, Neo in the cloud, and Neo in the browser. The dotted lines between nodes represent Neo's communication protocol connections. Neo's communication layer is called PubKeeper. You can read a lot more about that on our website, but it's essentially it's a protocol agnostic communication layer. So with that, let's jump back over to the map screen here. And as you all kind of can start getting here and joining, I'll zoom in on the US. It looks like that's where most of our participants are today. We're going to be demoing a few different aspects of Neo with this demo. One is going to be connectivity. So we are going to be showing multiple communication protocols all working together in real time. We're going to be very device agnostic. We're going to have Android phones, iPhones, maybe there's some Windows and BlackBerry phones out there. Do those still exist? I don't know. And yeah, so we have different clouds running. We have a web browser here running, a lot of different devices all working together inside of a Neo system. You're also going to see the low cost of getting devices involved in a Neo system right here. We're certainly going to be demoing distributed intelligence. This is one of the core tenets of Neo. We're going to be running logic on devices in the cloud and at the presentation layer here on this browser here. And you're going to see the real-time nature of Neo, the speed and the low latency at which messages are moved between the different devices in the system is really important when you're talking about a streaming distributed system. And finally, we're going to show the configurability of Neo. We'll be updating and deploying system updates in real time. You'll be seeing the system react and respond to changes in the system right here in front of you. We're going to be doing the entire demo without storing a single byte of data. I'll touch more on that later, but data storage is not required when using the Neo platform. It's a streaming platform, not a data aggregator. And we'll show you some user-defined privacy, which I will actually kind of touch on right now. So just one more time, if you want to join and participate in this, grab your phone, go to the browser on there and type in n.io/demo. It's going to ask you for an email, and that will power your Gravatar if you have one, or if you don't have one, it will assign you a random robot Gravatar. So we'll look at that later. And you'll also on there be able to choose which cloud provider you want to connect to. So as I mentioned, we're running this in 3 different clouds. You can choose one now. You can change it later on by clicking your avatar at the top right. So you can choose which cloud provider you want to connect to, and we'll show how all 3 of those can work together. They don't have to be, you don't have to choose one and stick to it. You can actually work with multiple clouds together. So that's the last join instructions. Get your phones and hop onto n.io/demo there. So let's dive in. So what you're going to see here is we're actually building a Neo system in real time. A Neo system is a collection of things that work together for something. Things can be disparate. They can be all over the country, as we're seeing here. They can be different devices, databases, visualizations, anything. But the idea is that they're all working together and communicating together in real time. Notice also, you've joined this Neo system without installing anything on your phone. It's a pretty low barrier to getting involved in Neo. So what's happening is this website on your mobile device is configured with a public token for the PubKeeper system. We've configured it that way so that it's easy to join. You don't have to install any apps or anything that way. You can configure the privacy and the permissions around joining PubKeeper pretty extensively. You can make it as public or as private as you want. If you actually look at your phone, though, the screen on your mobile device, you'll notice there's a GPS panel on there with a map. And underneath that map, there is an on-off toggle. So that will actually allow you to send or not send the data, and you can see people as they drop off the map here. If you turn that off, you're actually going to stop relaying your GPS data to the cloud, which will make it not visualized, and then you can turn that back on. So that's pretty cool. We can tell a privacy story with that. You're in control of whether you want your data shared from your device up to the cloud or to a visualization if you want or not. But when we're talking about intelligence at the edge, we can get even smarter, right? We can be a lot better than just turn it on, turn it off. Those are our 2 options. So we're talking about putting full context at the edge. So what we also can do, there's another toggle on there that you see called safe mode. And if you turn on safe mode, that'll be if the toggle's to the right and it says safe, then you'll notice on the map there that the dot's probably not quite exactly where you actually are. It's probably close to where you are, but not where you actually are. So this allows you to participate in the demo, but not let me kind of zoom into your house here and find it on Google Earth and get a little creepy. So with intelligence at the edge, we can create smarter analytics at the edge and anonymize this data there. So we don't actually have to send exact GPS coordinates, but we can send nearby coordinates. So what it's doing is it's kind of blurring and kind of moving your dot randomly around in your general area so that we're not seeing your actual address. So it's a really important story about privacy in IoT systems. If we can have user-defined privacy where you are in control with your device of what is being sent and the data that's being sent, you can anonymize that data there. Especially in consumer IoT, just data privacy is obviously going to be a really, really important topic to talk about. So let's move on to a different type of visualization. We have people here joined from all over the place, you see. Texas is representing today, way to go. And so let's move on to the Explore tab. Let me reload this guy. And here what we're going to see is actually all of the different clients that are connected right now. So we've got a bunch. It looks like we've got I don't know, that's testing my multiplication here, 60, 70 clients maybe that are joined right now. So you can find yourself with your avatar. If you have a Gravatar enabled, that'll be a little bit easier. If not, your random robot is going to be up here at the top right of your mobile app, and you can identify it here that way. Yeah, so you can quick kind of find yourself here on the screen. And what we're also going to notice is if you look at your phone again, above the GPS panel, there's an accelerometer panel with the toggle that is probably on. If it's not on, go ahead and turn that on. What you'll notice though is that it's on, but it says paused, and it's not actually doing anything. So what's happening right now is that your phone is turned on and ready to publish accelerometer data, but there's no subscribers. No one actually cares about this data right now. No one wants this. No one wants to subscribe to this data. So because there's no subscribers, Neo's smart enough to know not to send the data. Why would we send data up over the network into the cloud if we don't need to, if there's no subscribers there? So what I'm going to do is actually off screen here, I'm going to turn on some subscribers. So I'll show you a little bit later in the demo how this actually works, what the system designer looks like. But I'm going to start turning on the subscribers of the accelerometer data. And you're going to notice on your phone that the accelerometer panel is going to activate. And we're going to have, sorry, I'm not sure what's going on here. And you're going to have the balloon should appear, and you can start moving your phone, and over your avatar, you'll see the blue dot start moving around and react in real time to kind of what your phone's motion is doing. So by turning on a subscriber in the cloud, I was able to activate publishers on your edge devices. And, oh, sorry, this is acting pretty funky for me. I was able to activate the publishers on your edge devices. They were able to respond to that change of context in the system and start moving the dots around. So our current output is that we're visualizing this data. Let's do something a little bit more interesting with it. So we can see this blue dot that's kind of moving around your actual faces there. And it's a little bit noisy though, a little bit chaotic and not really anything interesting. So what I'm also gonna do is I'm gonna turn on another service that's going to start listening to that same accelerometer data, but instead of drawing lines, it's actually going to detect whether you are shaking your phone or not. So this subscriber has been started in all of the clouds, and now if you shake, you can see people shaking there. When you shake your phone, just give it a little shake. You don't have to do it super hard, but you got to put a little muscle in there, and you'll see your actual card start shaking, and it should respond, and your card will shake when you actually when you shake your phone there. So we've taken sort of a chaotic, noisy data and created a condition out of this data. The condition being that you are shaking your phone or not. So at this point, we have 2 services that are running in each of our cloud providers. So 6 services running in the cloud total, 2 in Amazon, 2 in Google, and 2 in Azure. One's listening and drawing that blue line, one's listening for shakes. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna change it up a little bit, and I'm gonna stop the one that's drawing the line in all of the cloud providers, and instead start another one. I'm gonna keep the shake one going, but now I'm gonna start another service that rather than listening for the raw accelerometer data, it's gonna listen for shakes, and it's gonna listen to that shake condition, and it's gonna do something, take an action on that data, create an analytic off that data. And that analytic is going to be a pretty simple one. We're just going to count how many times you've shaken your phone. So now you'll see everyone has their individual counters going up. Sorry about that. I got to keep reloading this guy. The counter is going to be going up individually for how many times you shake your phone. And we've now created something. We've taken some sort of noisy, chaotic, random, not random, but just uncertain data, and we've created a nice analytic, a nice condition out of that, and that is how many times you've shaken your phone. So at this point, we're kind of doing everything on an individual basis. So everyone's got their own card and your own shake counts and your own accelerometer readings and all that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start kind of grabbing some people at random here, and actually I'll grab some people that have pictures. I'm just going to take a few, and I'm going to kind of just select at random, get a couple different clouds going, and we're going to take a deeper look into some of these people. So the reason I'm doing this is just so this screen's better for viewing a lot of different people. I'm going to look at just some people specifically here. So rather than do all this on an individual basis, let's start taking this data and relating it to each other. So let's kind of start grouping this and consolidating it together. So by selecting a cloud early on, in a way you kind of joined a team, if you will. So what we're going to do is start computing a magnitude and aggregating that data based on which cloud you are running in. So I'm going to turn on this other service. It's going to start subscribing to your accelerometer again, and it's going to compute the magnitude of your current shake. So yeah, if you shake your phone, number 12 up here's got it. The faster you shake or the harder you shake, the larger your line's going to get. And your individual cards up here are going to be the same. They're still just kind of on an individual basis. But below, we're actually grouping all of this by your different cloud providers. So you could see, I might have just selected more Azure people than Google. It looks like I've got 5 Azure on here, 3 Google, and 1 Amazon. Amazon's got to represent right now. You can shake harder. There you go, he's got it. You can also change your cloud by clicking the avatar at the top right. If you want to do that. But really, yeah, so we're taking data from a bunch of different devices over a bunch of different cloud providers, and we're aggregating all that together and combining it and creating a meaningful grouped visualization of it right here. So now there's one other aspect that I touched on earlier in the demo, and it's that we've been doing all of this without storing a single byte of data. So in other words, the data is very ephemeral with Neo. It's streaming, it comes into the system, it goes to the visualization, and then it's basically gone. So in this case, the ephemeral data is set to really only store the last data point. If you notice this bar here on the right of the user is you only have one data point here. But just like everything in Neo, the ephemerality of the data is also configurable. So now I'm going to flash over and kind of show you under the hood a little bit about how we configure the context of a Neo system. So I'm going to take us to the System Designer, which is our tool that lets us design and configure systems in real time. I'm going to connect to this system that we're on right here and change the ephemeral nature of this data. So I'm going to flip us over here to the System Designer. And I'm connected to our demo system right here, which is these 3 Neo instances are included right now. We have one in AWS, one in Azure, and one in Google. So I'm going to connect to these 3. And what I'm going to do is we can do there's other demos and other information on our website about how these instances work and everything what the System Designer does. But what we really have to know is that Neo instances and Neo systems are configured by assembling workflows of blocks. So data is moving top to bottom through these blocks, and you can kind of configure the different rules around them as you get there. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to change the sliding window block. Right now it's set to capture only one signal of the most recent signals. I'm going to set that to be 10 and restart the service. I'm going to do the same thing over in the Azure cloud. So what I'm doing is I'm changing the context of the system and then redeploying it all right here in real time. And then finally in Google, change it from 1 to 10. And so what I've done is I've changed how much ephemeral data we're kind of keeping in memory and visualizing on the other screen. So if I go back here, now if you start shaking your phones again, the people that I've selected here, you'll see we have more data points. Before we only had 1 bar, now we have 10 bars. And not only does that apply on an individual basis, it also applies on our cumulative group basis down here. So we can change how much data we want to show, change the window size, if you will, of how much data we want to kind of keep track of as we go. So we can build more or less and change that depending on the memory footprint of our devices, what our persistence layer looks like. All that could kind of just be configured with Neo. So we've sort of consolidated here across different clouds. We're seeing the groups here. Let's go back and kind of tie it all together by going back to the map view again, where everybody can play again. So instead of doing grouping by cloud providers, we're just going to bring everybody together and take all this different data from all over the country and all the different clouds. And if you start shaking your phone, everyone can play in this one. Doesn't matter if I click your face or not back there. The more you shake your phone, you're going to see your heat map kind of start activating here. We're going to see as people are shaking their phones all across the country right now, just this map react in real time to where people are shaking at the moment. And as I'll let you kind of reconnect there. If your phone goes to sleep, you can re-wake up the screen and get back into the app. But yeah, so let's kind of just recap on what we showed you here. You saw connectivity. You saw multiple communication protocols. You saw your phones talking to cloud providers over WebSockets. You saw backend Neo instances talking to each other over TCP sockets. We saw different devices activated together. We saw mobile devices working with cloud providers, working with websites. And you saw that low cost of getting your devices on board. You just went to a website and you became a player in this Neo system. The distributed intelligence, we showed you user privacy at the edge. We showed you the ability to not only filter and stop sending data up from the edge, but also to anonymize and control that data that's being sent from the edge. We saw logic on the devices and the cloud, even logic in this presentation layer. The computation of this heat map is happening all here in this presentation layer. Multiple clouds all working together, and definitely real-time messaging. You saw the screen and just the output of the system reacting to your motions and your actions out in user land in real time. And finally, but certainly not least, is the configurability of Neo. Being able to deploy and update that system in real time without a single byte of data storage is one of the main features of the Neo platform. So with that, I'll pass it back to Alex, and we'll move on with the presentation.
Great. Thanks, Matt. That was really interesting. And I think it's awesome to be able to see the different features and not storing data and streaming it and all the different views. I mean, even the designer, super simple, able to drag and drop. So obviously that demo provides the example of the flexibility and the features. Now, it's a bit abstract. I think it'd be good if we could dive a little bit into Neo in the field, in the real world. So can you talk a little bit about an example of how Neo is actually being deployed in the real world?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a great question. It definitely, the demo is a metaphor in a lot of ways. There's not a lot of actual use cases where we need to shake our phones to populate a map. That doesn't make businesses a lot of money. But so here's the architecture of the demo that we just looked at. We had edge devices, which were mobile phones. We had cloud gateway nodes, if you will, running in all the different clouds. And then we had visualization at the top layer. So this is the demo we just saw. What I'm actually going to do is show you a familiar looking architecture, but this is an architecture that's running at a vineyard in Arizona currently. In this case, the sensors are soil sensors, they're weather sensors, there actually are mobile phone sensors out there. We are capturing data from all throughout the vineyard. It's about a 15-acre vineyard, and just capturing various types of sensor data there. Our edge nodes in this case aren't mobile devices, but we have Dell gateways, we have Arduinos out in the field, and we have Raspberry Pis. Ultimately, this data makes its way up to a Neo cloud node for data storage and future kind of machine learning and yes, just deeper learning opportunities on this vineyard data. And then ultimately it makes its way to a visualization. There's actually 2 visualization nodes in our vineyard architecture. One runs at the actual vineyard itself on site. That way it allows them to control their irrigation and view kind of the characteristics of the vineyard. If the internet goes out or if they're on site, they want to be able to turn the sprinklers off if the power goes out or the internet goes out. You still want to be able to do that. And the other one is available on the internet via a login that allows the vineyard manager to kind of control the vineyard from his couch. And that's the UI I'm going to show you actually right now. I'm going to flip over to our ag vineyard website. So this is what the vineyard manager would log in and see. We're looking at a read-only version of this. So the data that's coming through is actually true. It's real data off the vineyard right now. They're not actively watering right now. I guess it's not time to do that. But it won't allow us to actually control the actual watering conditions there. So if we flip down to system view here, you see it's a pretty dense view and it's pretty small. This is basically a raw capture of all the data that's being captured from Neo instances in this vineyard right now. So even a kind of a smallish 15-acre vineyard is producing just massive amounts of data. And this data does not all need to make its way up to a cloud or to a data lake for processing. We can take action on this data at the edge, and especially in the agriculture world, the velocity of this data is pretty slow compared to some other industrial opportunities. It's not, the soil moisture doesn't change on a per second basis. But here's kind of a raw capture of this data. Not very digestible, not very usable, probably not looked at very often just because it's too much data. We want Neo to do something with this data. I don't want to have to do anything as a human with it. So one of the cool things that we've hooked up is the ability to control the irrigation of the vineyard. So this gives them an overview of their kind of plot there. They can select a zone, and that zone will allow them to view and set the soil moisture thresholds. They can kind of drag these sliders around and set what soil moisture levels they want each plot to be at. They can even control the moisture at different depths. That's something that winemakers want to do. Different grapes grow, they need moisture at 16 inches versus 32 inches. And I don't know how that works, but the vineyard manager does, and he can change that all from here. So that's the way we want it. So they can also up here control how much water they apply to the plants in a new metric that we've created called gallons per vine. Typically anything, when you water your lawn, whatever, you water it based on time. But plants don't really care about time, they care about water. So by attaching flow meters and pressure meters to the actual irrigation system, we're able to allow them to water based on a number of gallons per plant rather than just how much time we want to water.
Great. So that's very helpful. And just for the audience, if you do have questions about the demo, I know we went through a lot. Feel free to submit your questions and we'll address them at the end. I'd like to transition now over to a discussion between Glen and Doug about industry challenges. And obviously, Glen, we've seen a lot going on in the market today. There's a lot of momentum, and I think it'd be great to talk about challenges holding us up and open it up to you guys to have a playful discussion.
Thanks, Alex. And Matt, thanks for that demo. It was great. Hi, Doug.
Hello, Glen.
I've known Doug since, I think, 2005 when he was running the innovation practice at Deloitte. And in a lot of strange ways, the conversation has been much the same for that whole period. And if I try and frame kind of how we see Neo fitting into the environment out there, competitively and technically and from a use standpoint, really all of these platforms have evolved from 3 technical legacy cultures. One is really the telco system and wireless and carriers and everything that's involved with that story. The other is IT systems, which we need to remind everybody are big batched systems. It's like a giant soup stock pot sitting on a stove. I collect up a bunch of data and I try and look at it and predict what might happen tomorrow, but not so much in real time. And the third would be automation and control systems, which are real time, but don't really understand or leverage the value of data beyond the use of that data and control. And the dialogue I've been having with Doug for over, almost 12 years now, has largely been that each one of these legacies sort of arrives at this story and are producing platforms today at the rate of, hundreds of different platform providers. And Doug, I think what we've been doing the last 6 months is reaching out to OEMs, I think over 50, and speaking to them about the challenges they face with these platforms. Each of these technical cultures have kind of arrived at the platform development story, missing big pieces of the story just based on kind of where they grew up and what neighborhood they were technically associated with. And I think there's several aspects of NEO that I think really address these enterprise IoT and connectivity and digital challenges that do so from kind of a clean sheet approach. And I remember back to our conversations in 2005, you were looking for platforms back then to address all three of these dimensions and telling me and us that really didn't exist. But we've kind of boiled this down to three. Low-hanging fruits, kind of the way I describe this, internal use cases with really good ROI and the ability to identify these things and act on them quickly without much overhead and essentially too many armies of people in white jackets trying to address them. The second is really the cost, time, and complexity to build and deploy these systems. We think basically it's still way too much heavy lifting, too much cost. And basically, digital and IoT is changing the way organizations and skills and people are interrelating, and the ability to move these tools to the people who actually build, manage, design, and run the systems that we're talking about in this IT, OT world. I think the third challenge is how will this relate to people and processes and the changes occurring there. So let's try the ROI and use case story first, Doug.
Yeah, thank you, Glenn. I mean, just a little bit of a context and maybe allow me to have a slight rant. Look at by now, virtually everybody understands that there's a digital mandate. You know, we have more mobile phones than we have people on Earth. So companies that don't have a digital agenda, I encourage you to get one quickly. So a little bit about my rant. Like we completely believe, I like to think we saw it first, but we completely believe in the power of this transformation to hyperconnectivity and digitization that we're now entering into. Despite the analyst forecasts of the tremendous financial benefits and the opportunities related to, let's call it IoT, one thing that concerns me about adoption and ROI is, frankly, the hype and the amount of false representations we're seeing. We've gone through the big data hype, we've gone through the everything cloud hype, and now we're going through this distributed intelligence hype. Okay, and a lot of knee-jerk reactions. So I like to remind everybody, and maybe it's just us old folks, about the IBM RFID commercials. For us nerds, we knew they were actually technically completely inaccurate. But that hype, I think, actually killed RFID. RFID was a very select application with a lot of potential, but the hype represented it to be doing a lot more than it could. So that part worries me a little bit about adoption. And we're seeing a similar pattern around IoT. We're flooded with commercials. In one way, it's great because it's raising awareness, but it also is creating, frankly, an inaccurate expectation around ROI and things like that. So,
agree.
So yes, I mean, we're absolutely living with this perfect storm now. Cost of networking is becoming de minimis. Cost of sensors becoming de minimis. Cost of compute is becoming de minimis. Extensibility and the adaptability of all of these things are becoming, frankly, quite easy. Infomercial for NEO, we think we help that. But so now the time is, it's time to install, and it's time to drive ROI. So let me take a breath for a second, right? Make no mistake, I think the biggest challenge we see is that this topic is not on the executive agenda. It's been pushed down to engineering or staff person. You look at major corporations and there's 82 people claiming that they're running IoT. So first and foremost, what we need to see is that this topic requires executive attention and leadership, make no mistake, and accountability. But jumping in a little bit into the ROI, when people use the I need an ROI or what's the use case card, frankly, that's an absolute red light. It tells us they do not grok the technology era that we are now in. But this isn't an opt-in era. This is a table stakes area. This is oxygen, okay? So first thing we ask is, do you have an executive charter? And if it's not, then of course we calibrate our level of interest. Next question we ask is, what's your solution stack? And how locked into that are you? If you're bringing an old legacy IT stack to solve this IoT challenge, frankly, it's not gonna happen. And then we get into discussions around technical debt. What are the sacred cows? One of the things that we learned in our time with Deloitte, really valuable time, was we got to look at over 200 companies, and the consistent reaction on all of them is they all had technical debt. They had a solution that had to run on this network or this compute or this cloud or with these sensors or this compatibility to an ERP, right? So they started off with a disadvantage. So first thing I want to say when you go into looking at your ROI, really be first straight with yourself about, what's your technical debt? What's your bias? And this generally leads to when people that bring these things, they've got an answer, generally loaded with technical debt, and they run around looking for problems. But their technical debt is so limited to the potential of the opportunity that frankly, there are no use cases, right? So the use cases are obvious, their solution is wrong, okay? So when we talk about ROI, first thing we ask people is be straight with yourself, right? What luggage are you bringing into this thing, or baggage, okay? Next thing, when we get in really specific, when we talk about capturing value, and look, we spent a year and a half very focused taking Neo into the field. You've seen what we've done in agriculture. Frankly, it's the only autonomous vineyard in the world today, okay? And, again, infomercial. This is the year we start partnering and JVing to globally scale our Neo agriculture solution. We went into factories, same thing, immediately got traction, because frankly, we went in with no technical debt. Neo is adaptable to all of your existing technology, no rip and replace. Okay, but specifically, we tell folks, look, understand the dynamics of your business that are latent. Ask yourself the question, what do I wish I would have known before it happened? What do I wish I could have controlled before it failed, right? This is about transitioning your business from batch, which is glaringly reactive, to more proactive, to eventually to predictive, and then eventually to fully automated, and then, of course, autonomous, okay? So the questions about ROI start with, your business. Frankly, nothing to do with technology, okay? So understand that. We love to study downtime. We love to understand when machines aren't working, but not just machines, but when people aren't working, when processes aren't working, right? That's our understanding that latency in those. That's your use cases, right? In a digital society, there's no excuse to be late. Not to pick, but why do you have to call your cable company to tell them your box isn't working? That is ludicrous. Those signals are available. Their systems are wrong. Sorry to you telcos out there, but there is no excuse for that, okay? So the biggest opportunity we like to tell folks is you've got to understand your entire trading ecosystem, okay? Forget looking for point solutions. Forget, picking up nickels and look for $1 million, right? So if you understand your ecosystem and how you convert digital information into the value proposition, there's your ROI. It's a different mindset, Glenn.
I think it's extremely different. If we go to our second point, cost, time, and complexity to build and deploy these systems, Doug, what I've seen, and I think really what I'm looking for here is what makes Neo different than what's out there. But people are spending, several to many millions of dollars just to stage the ability to get a pilot out there, a proof of a concept. And the heavy lifting, the cost, the number of professional service people with the system, with the software, with all the connectivity headaches and integration headaches. Give me a picture of what Neo will do in this kind of environment that's really distinct and different, Doug.
Yeah, so one of the things that's deeply ingrained in our ethos is that we think of Neo as always openable. The absolute minimum technical debt, frankly, I had a major Microsoft executive react to us the other day and said, you guys should open source this. Well, there are parts of Neo that are open source, and in the perfect world, if Matthew here is my co-founder and I had the ability to open source, frankly, in our ethos, we probably would. Okay, but Neo is openable. So I think that the main thing with Neo is you're not bringing any technical debt into your solution, right? You're not immediately looking at the IT/OT battle of what do you have to rip out? What technology do you need to sunset before you could install Neo? Forget all that. Just forget all of it. Bring it in, make it adaptable, get it working. Then you start your upgrade process. So the first thing is the Neo architecture is been designed to be on a maximum basis extensible and adaptable to the environment that you're going to install in. Okay, we showed you a cloud application, with a mobile phone. If that's the use case, we just showed you how simple that is. End of story. Okay, now you're integrating it into your security and other things like that. But the second part, what I would say is we need to get over this mindset that everything has to be data. It doesn't work, folks. Those of you that are in the IT business, you understand the data transmission time requirements. It doesn't work. You can't provide microsecond automation with everything to the cloud, everything stored in data, post-data analytic business model. It doesn't work. So despite Peter Levine dropping the mic about a year ago in November and telling everybody the cloud is dead, that everything needs to be decentralized, what we're seeing is, yes, everybody pivoting and calling things the edge, but they're really not. What they're doing is taking the cloud and everything data and calling it the edge and frankly, just moving hardware outside of the cloud. So I think the big difference with Neo is we've always thought of Neo as the ability to apply your computation where it needs to be, right? Period. Apply your computation where it needs to be applied, right? That doesn't mean we don't love the cloud. The extent, the leverage and extensibility that the cloud provides is amazing. And for SaaS software companies, it's nirvana, okay? There are times that the cloud is absolutely the perfect edge. We're here to reimagine the edge. The cloud is the edge and perfect. We have an in-home healthcare solution right now. It's a very low frequency solution. And simply at times the cell phones need to provide context to a cloud, changing the way this business does its services. But, right, now they can also use Neo for applications where the cloud needs to be something else and the edge needs to be something else. Neo provides that extensibility. So what I would say is we've attacked what we believe are the friction points. And this isn't friction that we've dreamt up. This is friction that we've learned from being in the field, connecting things, right? Starting in jungles and following, supply chains all the way into store shelves and, wiring things in factories and digging trenches in the middle of Wilcox, Arizona, right? So we think we understand the implementation requirements. And frankly, we've built Neo to address those things. And oh, by the way, play nice with everybody. As you saw us switching between clouds. Our world is to federate everything.
Well, if we go to the last challenge, changing people and processes, this is my joke about how many guys in white coats do I need to deploy this? And given the dynamics in organizations and certainly the disruption and changes and discontinuities that digital is causing in organizations and relationships and skills and so forth, give us a picture of how this fits into the world of how easy is this really to use and how can I match this to the thing I'm really trying to do?
Yeah, I'll be direct. I mean, we've spent the last 6 months continuing to take the complexity out of using Neo. Are we done? Oh, absolutely not. But we ran a test last summer. We brought a 14-year-old young man in and paid him to be an intern. By the end of the summer, he was configuring solutions with Neo by himself. Okay. I'd say today, within the enterprise environment, you need a low-level system administrator. It doesn't have to be a computer science, doesn't have to be a double E. It could be anybody with a kind of a low-level system administrator. So if you could configure a Mac, you could use Neo, or a PC. And so, but the bigger aspect I want to talk about is the challenges of within the organization of the people, the organization making this transition. We can't be naive here. No sane person is going to give up control of something that they're accountable for today to a machine. They're not going to give it up until they can trust that machine. So what we talk about is progressive adoption. If a human simply wants to visualize something for now, that's fine. And that's not going up the entire curve to automation, but that's their progressive adoption. If we walk in and say, look, you've been doing this manually for 25 years, give it up. Machine's going to do it for you, or install robotics. Forget it. You're not going to get the reaction. We found that this started years ago, and Matt and I inside of a dirty candle factory. And I don't want to give too many details of that because it's stuff folks with. But the promise of this digital society we're living in is that humans can, in fact, enable computation to do work on their behalf. Okay, and that's part of the process we can't forget. And therefore, Neo's been built to provide that automation. We've done a lot of studies on human behavior, and frankly, it takes a human can handle quite a bit in real time simultaneously. They multitask well. So if you can't deliver an action, if you can't get a data input and deliver an action in less than 200 milliseconds, there's no such thing as real time. Neo's been built to be perform even in microsecond level performance. You can't get into industrial automation if you're in seconds or milliseconds. So understanding the environment, I think the people challenge, and we can't be naive about dropping these solutions in and waving a magic wand and thinking people are going to get it. It won't happen. They'll fight you tooth and nail.
One last question, just coming back to what I was describing at the beginning, which is if we have this car collision called telco meets IT meets automation and control, I mean, what you're describing essentially is a stateful or a state-based, real-time or more deterministic way of handling all of these kinds of systems and physical things and the kinds of data they produce. All of this has to occur in a truly distributed architecture. Could you comment a little bit about Neo's architecture? Because I think this is one of the things that's not easy to explain, but is revolutionary about how you see these technologies really working.
Yeah, this is our biggest cobbler's kids challenge, right?
Yep.
Look at it, simply to us, starting with Matt and I, we were committed that Neo should be able to be installed and run as an application on any type of machine. Okay. Today, recently, if you follow our YouTube channel, we showed visual analytics with TensorFlow running on a Raspberry Pi Zero, $5 worth of compute doing contextualization in real time. Okay, but we're not settled there, right? So we're now, especially with the help of our Director of Innovation, James Holmes, we're reimagining the edge, which is a topic of this all the time. To us, the edge is what it needs to be. To us, the edge is a browser. To us, the edge is a microcontroller. Why can't a microcontroller do low-level processing, not just transfer data? But the bigger opportunity, gateways. To me, the ultimate gateway is a mobile phone. We're working on mobile binaries now, right? So all of this is part of using Neo, is that we will continue to provide the new applications for you to reimagine your distributed, right? There is no canned reference architecture for distributed, where we just showed you cloud to mobile, okay? Now we showed you a venue, that won't work, right? So Neo gives you that extensibility to apply computation distributed. It enables you to do peer-to-peer and client server or hybrid combination. So it's really, to me, as an old fart solution guy, it enables me to solve problems which generate benefits.
Thank you, Doug. It's really amazing.
Great. Thanks, Glenn. Thanks, Doug. That was a wonderful discussion. And just to call a couple points, I mean, we've obviously been tracking you guys for a while. And I think the one thing that we've always been impressed with Neo is that you've remained kind of flexible. You've never tied into one industry, one app, one use case. You've continued to just remain open.
Yeah, VCs hate that. But yes, we frankly were really committed to creating a true platform, not just a marketing hype.
Absolutely. So you're live. I mean, you're here. Congratulations. Yeah. No, it's been a while and it's great. So obviously 2018, fresh, new year. And so I'd love to kind of switch the discussion a little bit and talk a little bit about market development in 2018 for niolabs. And as the CEO, get your perspective on where you guys are headed.
Yeah, we did a big shift in the middle of last year. Frankly, it's, if you read a lot about startups or follow podcasts about startups that get early success get kind of addicted to that operating revenue crack, as it's called. We fell straight into that. Frankly, we were printing money and doing great things until one day we were meeting with a guy and he called us a consulting company. He frankly called us a consulting company with a cool technology in their pocket. And my first reaction was to kind of get pissed off at the guy, but we walked around with it a little bit and we looked around and said, look at, he's right. This guy was right. We were also looking at being late on our productization standard. And we had a high bar, ship quick is what they try to tell you. But, we frankly had a very high standard at what was a product. And last year we were not. We were a product as long as Neo hands were on the product. So we've spent the last year getting Neo into a self-service operating model with our portal that supports it, our documentation, workshops, forums. And so our go-to-market plan starts with building community. We have a complimentary license that allows you to do a lot of things. Okay, but as you learn Neo, and we understand there's a commitment to learning it. We don't think it's great, and we're there to help you, and we're going to continue to drive that learning curve down. But complimentary license is that our investment in you, right? We have costs associated with it because that comes with a managed cloud instance. Okay, so we're starting to develop a community first and foremost. Okay. we think the company that's committed to driving adoption is going to win. Then we allow it to step up into an individual pro license, then enterprise license. But if you look at our team licensing from our webpage today, right, you can in fact connect multiple factories, highly instrumented factories, for $1,000 a month, right? And we look at companies that are more focused on driving consulting revenue than delivering software solution. We've said, look, we want our software to do the work, okay? So this is the year of developing user growth, investing in them. Google's been a magnificent partner. We've selected them as our back-end partner. And we'll be, shout out, we'll be in their booth at IoT World. Stepping up, we get into team license. The only thing that we don't do is we don't throttle your usage. We recently had a situation with a big telco that was trying to push a popular IoT middleware. And the client asked them, how much is this going to cost for us to use? And they said, well, it depends on how much you use it and how much data you put across our network. That's insane.
Yeah.
I mean, that's insane.
You don't see that out there.
Yeah, you know, we drive up 36 in Colorado all the time. There are toll lanes. It's the same thing. People jump into the toll lane as soon as they see an RFID reader, they jump out. So if we're going to put a toll on people's usage, we're going to drive down user adoption of IoT, not up. So what we've said is there are no barriers. The only thing we use is, of course, the more managed instance and the more people you have. But it's a very user-friendly license. And frankly, it's one that should be built to support our business quite nicely. Now, stepping up, we're aggressively now forming partnerships. We've talked about our partnership with Google. Great things happening out of that. We've talked about our partnership with Dell. Look at Dell makes a couple of really nice IoT gateways. They're running out in high heat in Arizona flawlessly. Dell's been a good partner for us, but we're talking to others and we're enlisting others. We're not just looking for logos to put on a webpage. We're looking for people that we go to market with, okay? And then lastly, the strategic. We're not going to do too many, but we are working very closely. A couple that are going to be announced soon. When we get arm in arm and we co-design go-to-market propositions with companies, right? And so that's kind of the third lane. But our bulk business is to use our portal and use Neo, and frankly, implement IoT and get the benefits from it.
Great. So if I think about, I'm stepping back just for a second, as you look at niolabs and you look at the journey you've been on, I mean, the struggles, the opportunity, as you think about, the team, what's got you most excited right now as far as the development roadmap and areas that you think you're moving forward in?
Look at it. I think the most excitement I have is watching our team be excited, right? There were times a year ago when we had, 20 people hanging out in a dirty factory, connecting stuff, right? And it was like sentencing them to the gulag, right? We've got people that have, been in 120-degree heat, digging holes and helping lay fiber and bend conduit. So I think what's now is we finally hit our business stride. We finally hit our productization. Everybody here is super proud. The work that we've put into our portal and our support, frankly, it's scalable. It's scalable for millions of users, not, a couple hundred, right? So I think I'm most excited about watching the excitement of our people.
Cool.
Right? First and foremost.
Great.
Secondly is we've taken the friction out of adoption.
Yeah.
We can talk to a major company, get them excited, and click on our website, and they're using Neo. Right? Before, it was a lot of hand-holding, a lot of heavy lifting on our part, very one-to-one, high touch. And now it's, now we're going to keep building more tools and keep doing workshops and things like that. But we are, we're taking the friction out of adoption, period.
Right. Yeah, no, and I think it's evident in the way you've designed the tools and the way that.
I hope so.
Yeah, no, it really is, and so with that, we're going to switch over to Q&A now, and we've had several questions come in, but the first question is, looking at how does this technology apply to smart cities, so such as autonomous vehicles or autonomy around public safety and resilience. Can you talk a little bit about smart cities and addressing there?
Yeah, I'm super pumped about smart cities. I don't want to give anything away, but. You're going to be reading about us in smart cities very quick. I mean, to us, smart cities are the perfect manifestation of a heterogeneous user experience, right? We have thousands of signal producers, mechanical, infrastructure, people, transportation, but we're going about it in a point solution side. If you look at the bulk of the smart city applications worldwide, they're claiming victory if they get some LED smart lighting poles, right? So proprietary systems, one-off applications are not a smart city. So we're going to be taking the lead on delivering that heterogeneous layer of not only data ingestion and analytic, but also control. So we're super excited, but we can't make any announcements on that. But smart cities is one of the areas you're going to see us very focused on.
Great.
And building partnerships.
Great. So how would you begin a conversation with an industrial partner to identify preliminary needs as well as to develop a long-term roadmap to drive future evolution and adoption?
Yeah, what we'd say first of all is, are you prepared to, to ditch your legacy technical debt, right? Are you prepared to actually design a solution, right? The perfect OEM partner for us, the perfect application for us is one where Neo is designed in, where it becomes compatible with firmware and invisible to the clients, right? It just works. Things just work. Things work within a system. We're not looking to get brand identity out of all these solutions. We are happy to be anonymous. So it's a longer play for us, but we see system on a chip or designed in at the OEM level as the perfect opportunity for Neo.
Great.
That's what I would tell OEMs and IoT people.
Great. So I know that you mentioned you're cloud agnostic, but you also mentioned your partnership with Google. Can you just expand a little bit for the audience about how you're working with Google to help drive adoption?
Now, first of all, we put all of them through a pretty heavy bake-off on who would be our back-end support, right? Our portal, we needed to make a commitment. And so our portal runs on Google, right? We made that decision. Secondly, we looked at people and, if a cloud provider has an everything to the cloud, mindset, frankly, they weren't going to be a good partner. What we love about Google, frankly, is they embraced our distributed intelligence vision and capability. Now, they also, in fact, have no problem that we can federate all multiple clouds, right? Bring the cloud into an asynchronous system, right? So there are, nobody has the perfect tool for everything. Great. And Google, frankly, embraced that with us.
Awesome. So if I think about Neo in the context of commercialization, does Neo support white labeling or joint development of platforms to delivery to end clients?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. It's, we have to make sure we're not cannibalizing one another. So that is definitely a strategic discussion. We've had some conversations with folks that tried to keep it below the strategic level. And, we would use examples of, we just finished a call with a major CPG company, and you walked in with a white labeled version of Neo, who's going to look like an idiot, us or you, right? So those white label discussions have to be are very cautiously crafted. But yeah, we are having discussions right now, and tactical as well as strategic, on white labeling, enabling others to use Neo.
Great. And Glenn, feel free to chime in on this next one, because it's more about just industry adoption, but we're starting to hear a lot more about edge. And you're, kind of, you mentioned earlier, everybody's taking the cloud architecture and shoving it to the edge, but true edge computing, do we really think the market's ready for that? And even really wants that type of, compute and architecture?
Well, not to be glib, but if they want to get any value out of this, the answer is yes. And if they want to limit their solutions to things that can only go sensor to cloud, have at it. I think dragging that business model to the market, number one, your costs are going to be way too high. Your dependency on data is going to eliminate the bulk of the use cases, and frankly, you're going to see yourself standing outside the door.
I mean, I think the advantage that Neo's architecture brings to this story is that IoT is defined almost completely by pre-existing conditions. And there's lots of data silos, lots of fixed things out there, lots of systems that will continue to need to run for a long time. And the fact that you can flexibly wrap yourself into that environment, integrate, and create a way of moving beyond that kind of environment in the future, I think is where the advantage lies. I think just taking all these old technologies, and I mean, to me, the world is largely sitting out there today trying to implement a 2005 view by about 2025.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. I think the market, Alex, is coming towards us, not away from us. Mm-hmm. And again, I'm going to use the Peter Levine mic drop on that. Yeah. But the other thing I want to make sure that the audience understands is that we get that all of this data, all these end results are, in disparate repositories everywhere. We view all those disparate repositories as state machines, as active participants within a Neo system, right? So our view is leave your data where it is, right? Yeah. Just leave it where it is. We'll go get it.
Great. So just opening up discussion a little bit more as well. I mean, when you think about customer challenges, you talked earlier about ROI, you talked about, adoption and people and processes. I mean, as we move and as you have moved into the market, can you just talk a little bit more about how you've seen companies overcome these challenges or ways that companies can start to think about overcoming these challenges?
Yeah, I'm going to go back to my first point.
Good.
It's on the executive agenda.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's not something that's been pushed down. Look at a pilot and a POC can't be victory, right? It can't be victory.
Yeah.
Building things that can't be scaled and taken to market can't be the goal.
Yeah.
Right. And frankly, there's no excuse for it today.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's not expensive to do. Now, look at, we think our pricing plan is a Scud missile.
Mm-hmm.
To us, this is for those of us that were active in the late 90s, this is the AT&T 10-cent minute for mobile phone communication. We've taken the excuses out of IoT adoption.
Great. So Matt, I've got a couple questions for you. One that came in was about, just around security. So the question was, how has Neo addressed security at a platform and data level?
Yeah, that's a big question. There's a few different ways. I mean, security is a loaded topic, and I probably have 60 seconds to talk about this.
We could have a whole webinar on that.
Right. But so there's really kind of two aspects that are really important, kind of baked into Neo. The first is the authorization and authentication side of it. So can users interact with the system in a certain way? How do we validate that users are there? So Neo, in addition to having its own built-in mechanisms to do that, can also work with existing. So if you have an Active Directory set up, or if you have some kind of SAML set up, then you can actually just tie that into the auth mechanisms of Neo. So that's really responsible for users interacting with the system. So if I'm on the vineyard and I can drag the sliders to control the watering, do I have permission to do that? If I go to the system designer and change the config for a block, do I have permission to do that? You can set all that through the Neo auth. So the other side of security is one that's, similar but not really that related, is just data encryption. And so it actually connects more to PubKeeper. And so when using PubKeeper within Neo to move messages across the system between devices, the data is always end-to-end encrypted. And that's kind of one of the key features of PubKeeper, is that when a connection is made, so when your phone makes a connection to that WebSocket in the cloud, a shared key is distributed to the two edge nodes, and it allows the data to be sent encrypted fully end-to-end that way.
This, Doug, maybe you could comment a little bit about your IP, intellectual property, and how this all plays out in your roadmap going forward.
Yeah, I mean, the notion of patenting software is something we're conflicted on with our openable mindset, but we do permit you to download Neo, right, and put it on your machines, right? If this was a 100% cloud SaaS offering, frankly, this would be an easy topic. We currently have 5 patents. By the end of this quarter, I think we'll be at 7 to 8. We're trending towards what we think is obviously a little mini portfolio. I think by the end of the year, we'll be at 10 to 12. Our architecture is patented. PubKeeper, our communication layer, is patented, patent pending. Things that we're doing in a viz layer are patented. But for us, patents are a defensive mechanism. You have to do them. So, but the good thing is that this is, in this day and age, software-related solutions becoming patented is really a tough thing to get, and we're getting them.
Great.
So,
you mentioned PubKeeper, and there was actually a question that came in about PubKeeper real quick. So just, can you just explain a little bit about the value that PubKeeper brings to the community, adopters, and that sort of thing?
Definitely. Yeah, I mean, PubKeeper is basically a way to federate communication across the system that allows you to use any communication protocol that you want. So I would really invite anyone that wants to learn more to go to the website. There's write-ups on it. Most of the documentation is out there, and the code is open source and all that. Or reach out via the support channels on the website, and we can get into a further discussion. But basically, what PubKeeper does is it allows you to use multiple communication protocols within your system, and it doesn't act as a translator. So I always say it's a matchmaker, not a translator. It knows how to match up two nodes that speak the same protocol without having to know how to actually speak that protocol itself. So when nodes come online in the system, in addition to informing PubKeeper about what topics of information they want to either publish or subscribe, they also inform PubKeeper about which communication protocols they support. And then when another node comes online, if it wants to listen to messages about a certain topic, PubKeeper will find the correct protocol to use for those two nodes to communicate with each other.
Great, Matt. Thank you so much. So we're going to wrap up. Doug, Glenn, Matt, thank you so much for joining us today for the webinar on reimagining and redefining the edge. We'd like to have you join us at IoT World in May. Please join Doug, Glenn, myself, and Matt at IoT World in Santa Clara. And last, we'd also like to thank Hackster.io for their support. So with that, we'll sign off. And if you have questions, feel free to reach out and have a great day.